So the first sewing that I'm going to do here is to create some of the better colored piping. This is such a tiny cord that I really don't need to put on my zipper foot. But I have decided with the needle in center position to have the edge of the fold right here at the edge of the clear part of my foot. Now I am taking that piping, for lack of a better term, that I've made, and I'm laying the folded edge right along my design table. And I have moved the needle just one position to the left of center. So do you see? All I need to do is keep guiding the center mark on my presser foot right along the line that I already stitched, and I'll get a line of stitching just a hair closer towards the folded edge. I love to make use of needle position, and as I do more of these videos, I'll show you when, where, and how I make use of it. On my sewing machine, I've got, I think it's a total of 15. So right now, do you see it's 2 to the left of center? And I'm gonna ask your forgiveness one time on my manicure. I work hard at it, but without paying somebody to do it, that's just the way it is. Sewing plays a really good number on soaking the oil out of your cuticles for sure. So you see, this is how I move the needle to the left, and this is how I move the needle to the right. So I had it at 2 to the left, so I'm gonna come back here. A lot of machines have this feature, you just don't know it. If you put your machine on left needle position, that stitch, and then use your width adjustment knob, I bet you will find out that you can move your needle. I have a whole YouTube on needle position you might want to go watch as well. Now I have stitched some rules I've developed. If in doubt, don't do it. Always leave a little bit more than you think you need, and stop before you think you're done. So I'm stopping my stitching here, and I'm leaving some extra so that I can give this a fine finish depending upon what else happens. Right side down, an off grain piece. So in other words, this is not straight grain because I want this part to flow. I've laid it on top of that piping. And as I decided to sew this, I thought, I'm going to stitch a little bit further to the right just to get it stuck down so that I know it's in place. I could have just pinned it, but then when I turn it over to stitch even closer to the piping itself, I'd be sewing with the pins on the bottom side, and I don't like to do that. So I placed it here and stitched like further out in the seam allowance. And I will tell you, before I realized that I wanted to have that butter piping down this row, I had laid this down and pinned it, and I was ready to stitch. And then I thought to myself, no, if I want that butter colored piping there, I've got to get that made and put that down first. As I decided to do this, I thought, you know, that little piping cord isn't really going to amount to much, so I actually pulled it out. So any woman can change your mind. So this is turning into not piping, but rather what I call a flat little accent piece, or a flange. Now what I've done is I've turned it over so the wrong side of the t-shirt is up, and I turned it around so I can keep moving my needle position a little bit further to the left. So do you see here what I've created? So this was with it 2 notches to the left of center. So now I'm going to move my needle 1 notch further over. So now I'm going to be stitching with the center mark on my presser foot along that stitching that I did first, but I've moved my needle 1 notch further to the left. By doing that, I can promise you that I won't see any of this first stitching from the right-hand side when I turn it over. I'll show you. I'll prove it to you. At this point, I have very carefully pinned this horizontal yoke, making use of the border print of the fabric, and I am stitching it on with clear monofilament thread in my needle. I've got the same navy in the bobbin, but believe me and trust me, when you sew with monofilament in the needle, you need to lower your upper tension. If you don't, you're going to see that bottom thread peek up at the top at every stitch. I've done the stitching over here, and even where I've lowered it, you can see a little bit of the navy coming up. Of course, with this stripe effect to the border print, it's very easy to stitch down. You just have to make sure that you're keeping everything in a 1-to-1 ratio. Completely flat. Neither one pulled tighter than the other, the base or what you're putting on the top. So now I'm back to the draping and designing. Here we have that butter-colored stripe. See that little flange? See how that sets off? It gives you that third element. You've got the base, an accent, and the main actress, the fabric that's really playing. Now, I've basted it in a 1-to-1 ratio in here, and when I say 1-to-1, I just mean flat, this much fabric to that much fabric. Now, if I wanted it to just cover, I would continue doing that. But if I wanted it to have a little bit of swing, you see, what I'm gonna do is leave more width and have this flow free, and then just attach it in here at the side seam. So at this point, I just have to decide how much swing, how much fullness do I want? Do I want just a little bit, or do I really want to see a fold of fabric hanging there? So I pinned it on the way I wanted it, and now, because I put my pins parallel to the side seam, I'm just feeling this bump of the side seam fabric below, and I'm simply kind of basting this on pretty close to the edge of the fabric. Then I'll cut off the excess. So here I have this t-shirt side up at my cutting table. I cut off the excess here along the side seam, and you can see how much fullness I allowed. Now, do I cut the bottom? Not till I put it on my body or on my dress form, and not until I get the front joined to the back at this side seam to figure out what's going on all together. So if in doubt, don't. Just stop. All right, having done the back, at least part of the back, with that butter suede flange, now do you see I can come back to the front, and basically I know I want to do the same thing here at that off. See, here's the middle, here's the center front, so I'm doing this off center. So I'm going to get that same flange in with this on top of it, with this drapey part. Then I can move on to this over here. Now, this may well have to tuck in underneath this, but I'm at least going to get the flange part on first. Then I might have to jump over here and decide this. So it's constantly growing brain cells by figuring out, what do I need to do next? If I do this, will the next thing that I have to accomplish work out, or do I need to leave a hole? Or what is it I need to do? Because we do try to not have to rip, although I never sew but that I have to rip, and that's the gospel truth. I'm going to share how I stitched this on with you, if for no other reason than to let you know that just because I do something one way one time doesn't mean I have to do it the same way the next time. Stitch down the butter suede flange, and then instead of putting this right side down on top of it and stitching along one of those lines, I folded that edge under, and first I stitched right down here, and you can see it's with that monofilament thread, and then I came back and did a very narrow, like 1 wide 3 long zigzag, again with the clear thread, down this edge. If I hadn't stitched this edge down, it would have been kind of flipping up, and you could see the stitching of where I attached the butter colored flange to the t-shirt. So in this case, I was top stitching. Now, the real clue to doing this successfully is that you have to stay again in that 1-to-1 ratio. You're dealing with woven fabrics on a knit base. So you've got to be very careful that you're not pulling one thing tighter than the other. Now it's back to the dress form to see what step might be the next one to take. Okay, as soon as I get this on the dress form, it becomes immediately obvious to Miss Dummy here that I should have not stitched between here and here, because however I decide this is going to be, it really should tuck underneath that. I'm friends with a seam ripper, so we'll take care of it. But another thing comes to me to really share with you. I've stitched this draped piece up at the shoulder and around the armhole and down the side seam. So do you see again how much extra I have here? That's going to cover up any tummy or hip fluff. But do you see right here that it's shorter by about, just 1/4 of an inch? Now, if I pull this down to meet, see, this was the already put in hem of the skirt that I'm using. That's not going to be a good thing. I should not do that, because if I do, that's going to make all of this kind of kick out at the hem. So you really, I keep saying you have to let things lay in a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to take out this row of stitching so that I can have this come all the way down to the bottom here. If in doubt, let there be a little more outer layer stuff than inner layer stuff, rather than the outer layer pulled tighter or shorter than the inner, or things just are not going to lay right. After some more stitching work, here's where I'm at the end of this workday. I fully expect to be able to finish this in, maybe 2 or 3 more hours tomorrow. You can see that this tab front here, I'm going to have to lower this neckline to get past that, because it's just a cutout. So that neckline is going to have to come a little bit lower, but that's okay. I like how all this turned out. You can see that I left a lot of length. I'm just not sure what's going to happen there yet. I'm going to maintain the regular sleeves. Up here at the shoulder line, you can see that I need to cut the lower, I need to lower the back neckline. And then here at the back, this is where I'm at. Again, I've got this little bit of butter suede right in here, which will make more sense once I get the collar on. Then I think I'm going to add this piece. I'm not real sure, because that's all I have of that. You see how it could connect in to there under the arm, but that's under the arm. If I just used the butter suede back here to finish this off, then I would have the suede in 1, 2, 3 places, which would leave me this piece that I could perhaps tuck in here as a belt. So if I tucked that in there, coming around here in the front, I'm thinking that might be kind of fun. But I truly won't be able to make the decisions about all of that until I get the collar on. So when I start work in the morning, that's what I'll be doing next, is the collar. I'm getting very, very low on this main ferny type fabric. I would like to completely line the back side of this big suede piece with this. So I probably can piece together enough. Of course, I'd have plenty if I used that pair of pants, but I don't know, it'd be a really cool outfit with the pants. So, but yet I have some excess hanging down there. So I think I can probably piece together the inside of that collar. That's where we're at today, and I hope you've learned something of the creative process. Again, it's just so much fun. I do hope this inspires you to try it.